Thank you for tuning into the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. Today on the show, we have Anton Zherelyev. Did I say that right?
That was really good, man, compared to
Really
what I
good?
usually say.
Okay. Well, I'm really happy to have you on the show today, Anton. I just want to let people know that you also run REI Simply, I think is what it's called. It's a call center, right?
Yes, REI Call Center. REI Simply is a CRM that we also use. It's a great product.
Okay.
REI Call Center is the call center side of things that we own, yes.
And so I just kind of want you to kind of give the audience an idea about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. First of all, Nathanael, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Add as much value as I can. But a little bit about myself. I am an immigrant living in this country for the last 30 plus years. I was born in this little not known country of Uzbekistan back in the day, and I moved to the United States when I was 11 years old. So been here for the last 30 years. My family background is Russian, so if that makes any difference, but it doesn't in my world, because I feel the reason why I bring up the value of being an immigrant is because I feel that that adds that a little perspective of how it is to grow up in a different country, see how little of opportunities other people have, and then coming to United States and realizing what you can really do with your life and taking the steps that is necessary for you to take to actually do something with your life. Back home, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. In this country, I think that if you have the tenacity of working hard, getting knowledgeable in a specific area, you will make a difference, and you will make a difference in your family's life as well. And I feel like that's what happened to me. I am the first millionaire in my family. I was the first guy that got my MBA, but the millionaire part is what I really like to focus on, is because I love Ed Milet's quote. I don't know if your listeners follow follow Ed Milet, but Ed Milet is huge on being the one in your family who makes a difference. And I feel that that is my passion. That is what I wake up and try to do every single day to change the trajectory of my life. And I've been living in Miami, Florida for the last 15 years. Before that, I was in Arizona. I went to school at University of Arizona. But over the last 6 years, I went all into the business of real estate. I started in wholesaling, which we can definitely talk about. And then I decided to open up a service company called REI Call Center, where we offer professionally trained cold callers to wholesalers, because that's what I was using when I was a wholesaler. I'm still a wholesaler to this day. I do deals that I buy from wholesalers. I wholesale deals myself. I have about 14 rentals right now in the Miami area. And every year I try to do at least 3 to 4 flips. So my whole world is real estate related, and that's really what got me here. There's one quote before I let you go that I love, that I heard is, COVID has already made a lot of millionaires, and I was just lucky to be one of them. Because before COVID, I was working at W-2. Like I said, I had my MBA, climbing the corporate ladder, making pretty good money, traveling the world. But at the end of the day, once I went all into my business, that is when things really started to change for me. And I was lucky enough to be on this side of taking the opportunity that needed to be taken to end up in a position that I'm in right now.
Very neat. I like that you said that you're an immigrant and that you had the opportunity to have a different perspective. The other thing that I think is cool about America is that we all love an underdog story. And so that I think that is an interesting aspect of the culture here. But you say that you had a pretty decent job as your W-2. What prompted the change? Was it just COVID? Did they have you stay at home for the duration of the pandemic, or what happened?
Yeah, I was very, very lucky. I want to say that luck has a lot to do with it. I graduated with a finance degree. My dream was to work at a bank. I wanted to be the Wall Street type of Wolf of Wall Street. Every young boy saw that movie when they were in their 15, 16 years old, and they said, "This is exactly what I want to do: have a life on Wall Street." And that's what I really went after. And I started to study finance, and I got my finance degree from University of Arizona. As soon as I graduated, I moved to Miami. I needed to get out of Arizona, so I moved to Miami. And Where the luck comes in is that I didn't realize it, but every single bank in Miami, Florida, that was hiring back then, this was 2010, the finance market was not the best at that time, but every single bank in Miami, Florida required you to speak two languages, required you to be bilingual if you wanted to start working there, so English and Spanish.
Interesting.
It was one of the most heartbreaking things that happened to my life, but then again, I say it's one of the most blessings, the biggest blessings that I went through, because I didn't end up working in a bank. And the reason for that is because I got a job as a sales representative for an oil and gas company that was selling products outside of Miami. Miami was their like import base. They were importing products from Europe and from Latin America, and then from there taking them all over the world. And I knew nothing about oil and gas back then. I got hired as a Russian translator. First 2 months in, I was promoted into sales because I love sales, and I couldn't just sit there and translate documents all day long. But to be honest with you, because I couldn't find a job back then, I applied for everything and anything. And they called me up and said, "Hey, can you be a Russian translator for this oil and gas equipment business?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever, for sure." I needed to get paid back then. It was 2010. I didn't have a job, sitting for about a month trying to find a job. And as soon as I got into sales, Nathanael, they started the first week in sales. My boss goes, "Hey, Anton, can you go to China?" I'm like, "China?" He's like, "Yeah, can you go to China next week? I need you to go meet a client." I'm like, sure. I don't even have a passport. So I started like getting my passport and expediting it. And I was on my way to China, Nathanael. And I visited Hong Kong. And then from there, they started flying me everywhere, man. They were like, you go to Europe, you go to Asia, you go to Africa, you go to Latin America, and I was living the dream, man. I got my MBA. They actually paid for part of my MBA. I was living the high life. I was making pretty good money back then, living in Miami, Florida, looking great, and traveling the world. But at the end of the day, because of how expensive the life here in Miami is, I was pretty much spending all my money. I was never investing it. I was never looking into anything else. But for the next 7 or so years, I was traveling the world, man. I loved it. I think I visited over 50 countries by now plus. And it was an amazing experience. So I lucked out that I didn't start working in the bank. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I learned the industry. So that was it, man. That was my life. I didn't think twice.
And they put you in places like China, even though they wanted you to translate Russian. Were you speaking to people that spoke Russian in these different places, or
Yeah,
was it just kind of a...
eventually they at that point, because of how closed market for oil and gas in Russia is, they weren't doing business in Russia. So eventually they did put me into Russia, and I started traveling to Russia, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, all those countries. I started opening up. But my first trip was China. I think they sent me there for training mostly. Now that
Okay.
now that I understand, they wanted me to go see how business operates in China, and Hong Kong had a lot of business back then. So it was mostly for training, honestly. But then afterwards, yes, you're right. They did use my knowledge of Russian to open up all the CIS countries, the countries of Uzbekistan. I went to my home country because of that. So yeah, man, it was a great life. And then as we all know, 2019 comes around, 2020, COVID hits, and boom, travel stops. Like literally overnight, I had to have Zoom meetings like this. Like I'm having a call with you right now.
Gotcha.
I had to get into the, you know, get into the wave of Zoom and Skype calls and Google Meets. And what happened was, honestly, Nathaniel, I would have maybe 2 to 3 meetings a day because I spent so much time on the road. You can imagine airports, hotels, airplanes, that I literally met with maybe 2 to 3 people a day, and that's it. And maybe even a week sometimes. And that was it. So it's not like I was struggling, but I will be honest with you, because of my personality, because of my eagerness of being that one in the family, I was sitting inside these 4 walls, and I'm like, this, I'm sorry for the lack of a better word, but this sucks, man. Like
You
this
didn't
is
feel like you were moving anymore.
Yeah, I mean, after traveling 6, 7 months of the year, I would take my wife. I, I, I didn't go anywhere for 6 months, and I was just sitting here. I'm like, what is this?
Mm,
How do I? And it was just that's my personality. I'm a super type A guy, and I couldn't, man. I couldn't. So I started to research and doing something else. And then I remember we were coming from the gym one day, And my girlfriend back then, now she's my wife, tells me one thing. She's like, well, my friends invests in real estate and they already have a duplex and we don't have anything. And back then I was living in a rental house. And I looked at her and that really hit me, Nathaniel. I really, even to this day, I remember it's like, you're right. Yeah, I have a few, back then maybe like $50,000 in the bank in cash saved as my emergency fund. But in terms of my investments, I had my 401k that I couldn't touch when I was 65. And I'm like, well, what am I doing? I need to expand into investing. And so from then on, I dove into this world of real estate. And this is one of the key takeaways for your listeners that I think that if you're listening to this, please listen to this, because this particular bit is really going to change your life. I think there's only one cheat code to success. Everybody talks about how there's like get rich overnight, which I don't believe in, of course, but there's only one cheat code that I found that is super important and that will change the trajectory of your life 1000% if you just take this one cheat code. And that is getting around people who are already doing what it is that you want to do and just start learning from them like a sponge. What does that mean? That means joining mastermind communities, going to the networking events. And you're not there to showcase yourself. You're there to learn from them and just experience it and just become a sponge. And I didn't understand that back in the day. Again, going back to the luck side of things, I was lucky enough to end up in a community of real estate investors who were in the process of buying their first rental, who were in the process of trying to finance their first rental. I know you do transactional funding. Back then, I had no clue what this stuff was, man. I would read all the books. I would listen to the podcast, which is all great. I mean, don't get me wrong. But until you start taking the action steps and quote unquote falling on your face a little bit and getting back up and saying, okay, I learned this, I won't do that again, not much is going to change in your life. So if you're listening to this, join a community and start taking action. Don't just use this type of books and videos and podcasts as entertainment. Take action. But the cheat code is to join a community.
And that's I couldn't agree more, Anton. It's was something that happened to me a year and a half ago when I joined Sub 2 and Gator Method with Pace Morby. And so looking back on the last year and a half and all the things that my life has changed, it's night and day difference. And it's because there is a community of people that I can go to for support. And then when I first did my first lending deal, there were so many things that I thought I understood already that I didn't until I started going through the process of doing a transaction. And so, yeah, I 100% back up what you just said.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's a game changer. And I got lucky enough to join this community. And I remember my first couple of calls of this community. And again, guys, I was scared shitless. I was like, these guys know more than me. I don't know anything about real estate. I don't even know what a loan is, like different types of terminologies out there. I started reading books, but then again, at the end of the day, I still had no clue. And one night they just asked me, what do you want to do, Anton? I'm like, I just want to buy my first rental. I want a house hack. I don't know if house hacking is still a thing, but back in 2019, it was a thing.
Yeah, a lot of bigger pockets talked about that for quite a while.
Yep. So that's what I said. I'm like, oh, I'm going to house hack, not knowing what the heck it is or just really understanding the whole thing. And then they said, all right, great. Let us know how we can help and do some deal analysis. And we would just talk about things. And then one night there was this individual that came on the call and he started talking about wholesaling real estate. That concept blew me away. I don't know how familiar your listeners are with wholesaling. Do you want me to explain it at all?
Yeah, go ahead, just in case.
Yeah, really quick. Wholesaling is a very simple concept of it's not easy. It's a simple concept, but it's not an easy an easy strategy. So you will have to put in the work, but it's definitely worth it. But the concept is super simple. You find a property off market that usually is in some sort of distress. So you either find it in a very bad condition, the roof needs to be replaced, the bank will not finance it, or the seller is in some sort of a distress where they're going through a divorce, they had a death in their family, tax liens, all different types of things. So you need to find a leverage that you can then use to buy that property at a very steep discount. So I'm talking about 50, 60% off in terms of getting that property under contract. And the reason you do that, you can get those discounts is because, again, you focus on the people that need the money, need it fast, and can't use other types of source of financing. So you find those home sellers that are going through some sort of distress. You tell them that you would like to go ahead and buy their property for, let's go ahead and use an example, for $100,000. And this property is worth maybe, let's say, $170,000. So you got $70,000 discount. And then you go to somebody like Nathanael and say, hey, Nathanael, I got this great deal for you, man. This property in 123 Main Street, I'm going to go ahead and sell it to you for $110,000. Now, Nathanael looks at the numbers and he knows that the property is worth $170,000. So what is he going to do? Of course, he's going to go ahead and buy it in a heartbeat. So Anton just made $10,000 in the transaction of that difference of $100,000 versus $110,000, and that is what's called an assignment fee.
Mm-hmm.
That $10,000 spread between what the owner got and what Nathanael paid for it. So I take that $10,000 and I put it back into marketing, start looking for more deals. Back then, the guy that I'm talking to you about, his name is Gonzalo Corzo. He was one of the biggest wholesalers. He was doing, Nathanael, back then, $4 million in assignment fees.
Every year.
And
Wow.
what I'm talking about, guys, this is a spread. He wasn't selling $4 million worth of real estate. He wasn't buying $4 million worth. He wasn't funding. He was literally making these spreads of between buying and selling. And I remember I went to his office, and on his board he had hundreds of deals, but most of them were like 5,000, 3,000, 10,000, 12,000. Yeah, there were a couple that are $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 assignment fees, but usually there were just like 100 small ones. So long story short, it got me excited. I started learning about wholesaling real estate. I started wholesaling real estate myself. And my whole claim to fame, Nathanael, is I made $100,000 from a deal that I found off market, that I found through a cold caller. Back then, I learned that this Gonzalo individual was cold calling for his deals. Because I was like, man, how do you do this? How do you find all these deals? This is insane. Like, dude, just pick up the phone and dial. Just pick up the phone and start dialing. And that's what I did. Every night, you know how you have the W-2 and then you have the side hustle, from 9 to 5, and your side hustle is from 5 to 9. That's what I did. From 5 to 9, I was making these calls, trying to find these deals. Hey, Nathanael, do you want to sell your property? Hey, Martin, do you want to sell your property? Long story short, it was very tiring. I'm like, man, how do you do this? This is crazy. All these calls. And he was like, oh, dude, I just hired cold callers. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, man, I hired cold callers, professionally trained cold callers. I'm like, no. He's like, yes.
You're doing it all on your own, right?
Man, yeah. Back then I didn't know, but then again, if you don't ask, you don't get the information. I just didn't ask him. I assumed. So he's like, just start calling people. And I'm like, okay. So I started calling people. And then I had to call him back. I'm like, bro, come on. There's got to be an easier way. He's like, oh, yeah, I hired cold callers. I'm like, why don't you tell me this a month ago? And to be honest with you, he didn't tell me that. He could have, but the reason why he didn't tell me that is because he wanted me to go through the struggle of trying to do it on my own. And I actually salute him for that, because then I understood that.
The other thing that I've noticed is that people who are successful give people who are looking for success little tests to see if they really want it. And it's very possible that was part of it.
Absolutely, man. I love that you said that, because a lot of people come to you for advice and say, hey, man, what should I do? I've tried everything, but then they don't do anything with that information. So they just like, so it's like your time is wasted. So yeah, I love that what you just mentioned, because if you're going to reach out to me, guys, I'm an open book. I love to help other real estate investors, especially the ones that are starting out, to get into real estate. That's exactly why I started REI Call Center, to find these off-market deals, because that's where you get those big spreads. Right now on market, everybody knows that the real estate market is insane. After the election, I think it's even going to be better. So in terms of the prices going up, because interest rates are going to go down. So competing on market is very difficult, super difficult, especially in this market. So that's why going off market is what I highly recommend. And we've been doing this for the last 4 years. We know that there's other methods of finding off market deals like Google Ads and PPC and all that great stuff, but we stuck to the good old way that works, because where's your phone most of the time? It's literally next to your hand, like next to you always. So whenever it rings, you usually pick up, or you don't. And whenever you have a cold caller who makes thousands of calls for you every single day, you're going to get some people that are going to pick up. And
Yeah.
so that's how we generate leads. Speaking of leads, I want to go ahead and give your listeners one of the first freebies that we're going to go ahead and give away on this call. It is very, very important, especially in this market right now. If you're interested in doing wholesaling real estate, you really want to make sure that your data is on point. And I'm talking about, again, you want to be calling people that are in distress, and you also want to be calling people where deals are being done. You don't want to call in the middle of nowhere in Butler, Arkansas, and find a deal and not be able to dispo it because there's no investors, right? So
Yeah.
super important for you to analyze your market, and this is something that we usually do for our clients. But for your listeners, if they just DM me on Instagram, and all you got to do is just DM me Pot of Gold, the name of this podcast, and I will connect them with my data team to run a free market analysis. So we will run through the zip codes, states that have the most cash transactions, the highest value of rent to purchase price. The areas where you want to do deals in before you even start. And even if it's in your backyard, you can tell us, hey, can you analyze my zip code of 33133? And we'll definitely be able to tell you how, on what scale it is. We have a scale between 0 to 100, and then you have different types of, these guys are smarter than I am, so I'm not even going to be able to explain it to you, but we will run a free market analysis for your listeners. Connect with us free of charge. There's nothing that we want from that, and then from there you can decide whether or not you want to go ahead and pull a list and do all that great stuff. So
Awesome. I really appreciate that, Anton. In fact, I'd encourage everyone who's listening, since this is going to be recorded on YouTube, to just go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and message Anton right now. Send him the message, Pot of Gold, and get your free market analysis. What value? Awesome. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, man.
Well, very cool. My curiosity is a lot of what happens to people as they're going through their journey. Nothing's ever just easy street, right? Imagine you probably ran into some issues and problems along the way. What kind of experiences did you have where you ran into a problem, and how did you solve those things?
Yeah, I would love to tell you a story of one of my deals where I was back then, going back to my story of wholesaling real estate. I started wholesaling. I started doing deals. My first deal was $7,500. My first year, I made around $56,000 in assignment fees, and I thought I was a great wholesaler. And then one deal came across my lap. It was right outside of, it's about an hour out of Miami, outside of Miami. I was going to make a $5,000 assignment fee on it. And back then, for me, I was like, sure, I'll take it. Fine, I'm good. I'm just like slinging deals here. I'm comfortable. I got my cold callers calling. I'm locking up deals, and I'm doing pretty good. Plus, I have my W-2. Don't forget. This whole time, I'm still working my W-2. But remember, I'm not traveling, so I have a lot of time on my hands. So that kind of worked out for me very, very, very well. But long story short, I found this deal, and I'm sitting at lunch with my fiance at this point, now my wife, and we're going through this deal. I'm telling her about it. Oh man, this got mold. It's like, I don't know, you cannot go in there without like a face mask. Like it was in a really bad shape. And I'm wholesaling real estate at this time. And again, at this time, we don't know anything yet. But what I would like to encourage your listeners to also understand that wholesaling is a great way to learn about real estate. So this is about a year in of me learning. And it's a phenomenal way to learn about real estate in terms of what prices you should be locking the deals at. How do you negotiate the deals with the seller? How do you negotiate the deal with a buyer? Because that's your next step. So there's so many things in the whole process that make you an amazing real estate investor down the line. How do you analyze a market? How do you pull a list? There's so many amazing things about wholesaling real estate. I would highly encourage your listeners to give it a shot, because you don't even need your own money other than maybe some marketing dollars that you're going to spend on the professional cold caller, pull a list. So like a couple $1,000 will get you your first deal. Like that's what I mean. And your first deal, like I said, will cover probably 3 months of your marketing expense. But back then, we're sitting at lunch, and she was like, "Okay, this deal looks interesting. Why don't we go ahead and buy it?" And I look at her, and I'm like, "Why would we buy this? This is in a horrible shape. What are we going to do with it?" And then she just looks at me, and she's like, "Well, we can just flip it." And I look at her, I'm like, "Flip it? what do we know about real estate, my man? Like, Nathaniel, I mean, in terms of real estate buying deals, but in terms of contractors, materials, like, I mean, I had no knowledge about fixing up houses, and I don't like to do that. I can barely put a freaking painting up or
Thing on the
the
wall.
sign up, like barely do this. It will take me about an hour to do. So I'll look at her. I'm like, you gotta be crazy. And she's like, no, let's do it. I have my, and her cousin at the time, I mean, he's still here, but he was like, he was not working that at the time. And he was really good at fixing houses back in Colombia. And I look at her, I'm like, you thought this through, didn't you? Before telling me this. So because she saw the houses that I was buying and selling. So this was in the back of her mind. I'm like, I don't know this is a good idea, especially this house. Like, I mean, there's not too much skin in the bone. That's why I was only gonna make $5,000. But but she was like, let's just do it. And I look at her and I'm like, you know what? You got me into this whole thing. I listened to you, and I'm blessed that I listened to you. So let me go ahead and give it another shot, and I'm gonna listen to you again. And we did. We closed on it. Came from a cold call. We started fixing the property up. Nathaniel, I remember literally driving to that property every night for about an hour and a half because of traffic one way, an hour back every day, working there from about 5 to midnight or 10 p.m. usually. And man, it was miserable. I hated every minute of it. Like, I hated like tearing up floors, painting the walls, changing the, man, it sucked. I hated it. I'm like, why am I doing this? She's cleaning something up. And I mean, thank God we filmed this whole thing, but and it was bad. At one point I'm like, this sucks, man. Like, I'm telling you, this property was bad in terms of how much stuff needed to be done. And we did it all on our own. People told us, be careful of contractors. I had a contractor come in and he was going to fix up my kitchen, and he gave me a quote of $10,000. And then I look at our cousin. He was like, nah, we can get it done for like $1,000. And I'm like, all right, let's get it done. So I was blessed that the guy knew what the heck he was doing, but it was just him and me doing the whole thing, putting in floors. Man, it was
A lot of
not
sweat equity, huh?
sweat equity. It was not cool. And I remember I'm like, I could be dialing right now. I could be making deals, and I'm here trying to like break this wall just so that we can and get this mold out. It was bad. But then, long story short, man, it took us about 2 months to get the whole thing done. And a month in, we put it on the market, and we made $94,000 on it. And I looked at my wife, and that house bought me 3 more houses. That was the step that got me into like, okay, you know what? And what I did from that house, Nathaniel, because I learned so much about real estate at that time, I didn't want to pay taxes on that $94,000, right? Because that's like 20%. You got to pay Uncle Sam. So I 1031 exchanged into a duplex and a single family. Like I said, that house bought me 2 more houses. But long story short, it was definitely a struggle while I was doing it, and it was definitely one of those moments in my life where I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just looked at my wife, and she's telling me to do this flip of this property an hour and a half away, and sometimes you just got to jump and figure things out on the way. And as a business owner,
parachute on the way down.
exactly, build a parachute on the way down. I love that you said that. And even in business world today, Nathaniel, now that we have this real estate business of 14 rentals, we have this real REI Call Center with 300 plus employees that we have on our team. Every day, man, every day something comes up, and that you have no clue how to fix. And you, as a CEO, as a business owner, got to get up and say, you know what, I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to make this okay. Every day. I don't think we had a day where I left my office before like 7 p.m. and I said nothing wrong went today. So on your way to success, on your journey to be who you want to be, and especially because we're part of the mastermind with Dan Martell. He always talks about being the 10.0 version of yourself. I love that concept, but I also think that that's a very, very difficult concept to live by, because you always got to be challenging yourself. You always got to be pushing yourself. Even today at the gym, I didn't feel like working out, but I knew I had to do my 5 daily non-negotiables. So I had to push myself for that 45 minutes. I'm like, no matter what, I'm not leaving this gym until 45 minutes in. And you just have to understand that no matter who you are, literally, this is cool, Nathaniel. We all know who John D. Rockefeller is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, John D. Rockefeller. Whenever we say that name, we think genius, lucky, like very, very like the smartest person in the world who figured out and did, or maybe not even smartest, maybe just the luckiest person in the world who took advantage of an opportunity. And now I'm reading a book called, by the way, highly recommend that book to you, man, especially now that you have a son. My friend gave me that book now that I'm expecting a son, but it's called 38 Letters from John D. Rockefeller to his son. Highly recommend you that book and to your listeners, especially if you're expecting.
This one right here.
There you go. Have you read it?
I'm working my way through it right now.
What do you think about it?
It's been really interesting. He gives advice not only on finances, but like on how to have the proper mindset towards life in general, and how people tell you that no one's coming to save you, but what I've been able to gather from his instructions to his son is that yes, that's true, but you can save yourself.
That is it. Your biggest hindrance in your life is going to be you looking in the mirror back at you. It's going to be you putting in the work. What I found fascinating about that book is that yes, he took advantage of the opportunity. Maybe yes, he even got a little bit lucky in some areas, and he does talk about luck, how you create your own luck. But I love how simple he keeps it about the importance of hard work,
Mm-hmm.
believing in yourself, having faith, whatever you believe in, just have faith that something that is greater than you is helping you along the journey. And then the importance of hard freaking work every single day. Every single day. Love concept. And I think that that if that's what John D. Rockefeller did and said, and that's how he lived, you know, I shouldn't be complaining about fixing a few things in my business or having a hard time. So anyway, so that's what I think is.
Well, definitely. And the crazy thing about Rockefeller is that even though he had all of his wealth, there were still things in his life that he didn't get to enjoy that we enjoy in our day and age because of the way the economy has gone and grown from his time, and the fact that we get to enjoy healthcare and quality of life benefits that he didn't have access to, despite the fact that he was the wealthiest man.
100% true. 1,000%. We
Always
have to
be
be grateful.
grateful. Definitely.
There you go.
Well, cool. Very exciting to hear that panned out well for you, and that it kind of opened some doors as you went along the way.
Yep.
If you had to give advice to someone who is just getting started out, or if you had any resources or educational materials that would be helpful for them, what would you tell them?
Absolutely. So if in terms of advice, I would tell them to start believing in yourself, man, or woman. Start understanding that you're not going to have all the answers. There's never going to be a perfect time to start that business or to take that chance to pick up the phone and make that phone call for your first property. Don't overcomplicate it, but do understand that it is just like you said earlier. It is really up to you to make a difference in your life. Don't wait for somebody to come and save you. There is going to be um, opportunities in your life that you can take advantage of. And yes, COVID, like I said, COVID for me, even though I know that a lot of people lost their loved ones, and it was a horrible time in many people's lives, including I'm sure your listeners. And um, but look at it as an opportunity of what you can do with every setback. I think that I think even Rockefeller said how like the obstacles only make me stronger, the challenges make you stronger. So celebrate those challenges. Another great book that
The
I just
obstacle becomes the way.
The obstacle becomes a way. There you go. Another book that I just read that I shared with my sales team that I loved is called Go for No. And in that book, it talks about how it's a super short, like 90-page book, and it's a fable about the sales guy that woke up 10 years ahead of where he was in his life, and he figured out how it is you going for the rejection, you going through the hard stuff, you going through the challenges that at the end of the day is going to make you the person that you want to become, that you plan to become, as long as you know where you're going. right? So set a plan where at least some sort of a version of a plan. It doesn't have to be perfect. Something is better than nothing in terms of how much money you want to make, where do you want to live, what your family life is going to look like, what your health looks like, what your mindset looks like, where are you living. So sit down. Right now, it's actually the best time of the year. November, I think, is the best time. I wouldn't even wait until December and January because that's the holiday season. But November is when my wife and I sit down and we talk about what do we want next year to look like? Where do we want to go? How much money we want to make? How much money we want to donate? But have some sort of an idea or a plan. And I guarantee you, you will be shocked with how many things actually happen. One really quick example that I gave you, I can give you, Nathaniel, is that I always had a dream about flying on a private jet.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anybody who owns a private jet. I never had enough money to pay for the private jet. And even if I did, I would not spend that kind of money because I thought it's crazy.
Like $5,000 an hour or something, isn't it?
It's insane. Insane. And I remember not last year, but a year before, because this happened last year. But a year before, I was at an event and I did this. It was in November. We did this whole goal setting. What do I want to have this year that I would like to achieve? So think exciting things too, right? One of those things where I want to fly in a private jet. I don't know how, but I would love to fly in a private jet. This year, I will fly in a private jet. I believed it. I said it. I had faith in it. And back in last August, I think that was the time is when. So it was like mid-year. I was sitting in my office doing my work, and then a buddy of mine calls me, a very wealthy buddy of mine at that time. Now that I was able to get outside of my comfort zone, but I haven't talked to him in a really long time. And he just calls me up one day. He's like, "Anton, what are you doing?" I swear, Nathaniel, you cannot make this shit up. I'm not making this like you cannot make this stuff up. And I was sitting, I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready to fly out to Washington, and this was like a Monday, and I was gonna fly to Washington on a Wednesday because from my business where we're doing some real estate, we had a real estate show. And he's like, oh, that's cool, man, that's awesome. Would you like to join me on to go to Mexico on Friday? We're gonna fly out Friday. We're gonna get there Friday night, spend Saturday, come back on a Sunday. I'm like, yeah, dude, sure, whatever, awesome, brother, it's cool. He's like, oh, and in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, now we're gonna buy tickets to go to Mexico. Sure, he invited me, why not? I'll go. Yeah, man, I'm also renting a private jet, and we're gonna take a private jet there, and you don't have to pay for anything. I got your hotel. And I'm like, I'm sitting, I'm like, huh? I swear. And then listen to what I said, Nathaniel. I'm like, knowing that this was in my goals, knowing that this was my dream, knowing that this was something I wanted to do, I'm like, well, let me check with my wife. That's how shocked I was that this was happening. I'm like, let me check with my wife and get back to you on this. Where I should have just like shouted, yes, for sure. And he's like, all right, man, cool, let me know. I go to my wife and I'm like, do you want to take a private jet to Mexico on Friday? Come back on Sunday? She was like, yeah. I'm like, done. So I had to change my flights. And long story short, I almost missed that flight. Listen to this. Okay, Nathaniel, again, you can't make this shit up. I was flying back on Thursday night back from Washington to Miami in time to make it to the private jet on Friday morning. It was like at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. So I had to rearrange my flight. I told my business partner I can't stay Friday. I have to come back Thursday night. I missed my original flight from Washington to Miami. Don't ask. It was a show. I left. It sucked. I don't know how I did it, but I did. I missed the flight. They put me on a red eye. Red eye that was going to get me to Miami at like 8:45, and his private jet was going to leave at 9 in the morning. And I called him up. I'm like, look, man, I screwed up. Go. I'll buy my ticket, and I'll see you in Mexico. At least I'll fly back with you on a private jet. I was thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, all right, dude, no worries. Do your thing. And then I get back to Miami at 8:45 a.m. red eye. His flight, for whatever the heck reason, there was something on a runway in Mexico that they couldn't take off here in Miami because they were not going to be able to land. Something happened in Mexico that they delayed his flight until 11 a.m. So
you actually managed to get on.
I made it, man. I made it to get on there and back. It's on my IG. I love it, man. And
you just line up.
What's that?
Things just seem to line up, don't they?
Only if you know where it is that you're going.
Yeah.
Only if you set
Nope.
that ahead of time. Don't hope for things to happen. Set a plan, have faith, and go. So you asked me about the advice. So again, so that was one of my biggest advices is set a plan and go. In terms of the resources, like I said, I'd love to help people. Please, 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 please reach out to me on IG. We'd love to connect with you. We'd love to even have a conversation like I'm having with Nathanael. Walk you through your first deal. Walk you through. Nathanael is actually a great resource because you will need transactional funding at one point in your life if you're a wholesaler. So definitely keep him in mind. But I would love to give your listeners away a few more things, such as scripts, right? Because you really don't know what to say when you're calling these homeowners. I will encourage your listeners to just start calling for sale by owners, just to get an idea of what it is like to communicate with home sellers. At least you know they're looking to sell. So you will have a conversation. But in terms of the script, you do want to ask the right questions, right? It's the quality of the questions, give you the quality of the answers, and show if you know what the heck you know or not. So I would love to give your listeners the scripts that we use for cold calling so that they can use them themselves. Totally fine. And then finally, we do have a vault of contracts. Now no obligations, and we say it in the contract when we give it out to you. But definitely check with your title company. But we do have a vault of wholesaling contracts that we have collected over the last 3.5 years of working around the United States that your listeners can use to start locking up deals as well. So just DM me Pot of Gold, mention Nathanael, and I'll give you all those resources for you for free.
Very cool. Really, really appreciate that, Anton. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the audience before we end the interview today?
No, man. I think I said it. I said enough. I said it all. Other than just don't be afraid to reach out. Join the communities that would help you level up and scale, and for at least take some sort of action. I always tell them. I always tell everybody, there's nothing that makes me smarter, better looking, faster. I mean, there's nothing that makes me special in the world of wholesaling real estate and being a business owner now, owning a company that generates 7 figures a year, helps real estate investors. Other than that, I took action. I started taking steps, fell on my face, got back up, and went forward. Fell on my face, got back up, and move forward. Because every time you fall on your face, you get smarter, you get stronger, you get better, and you start succeeding. But take action.
It's like I saw actually an Instagram post about this from one of our other elite members. They talked about how life, success, and failure are two sides of the same coin, except it's a magic coin. And every time you flip the coin and it lands on failure, the percentage that it's going to land on success bumps up by a small percentage. And so if you just keep flipping the coin, eventually it's going to come up as success every time. And I really like that metaphor to describe why taking action is so important.
Love that.
I think that just getting the motion, like where you're moving in a direction, is essential for anything that you're trying to do with your life.
Yeah, one of the quotes I read this morning from Rockefeller's book, in one of the letters, he says, like, human beings are like bicycles. You always got to move forward. If you don't, you're going to fall and not go anywhere.
I like that.
So just keep moving forward, and eventually you'll get somewhere. Maybe not where you thought you were going to go, but it's definitely going to be somewhere special.
Well, if you're moving, the thing is if you're moving, you can make course corrections, but you can't do that if you're just sitting still.
That's a great metaphor, man. That's a great addition to what he said too. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, Anton, and I appreciate your time. So if the audience has any questions for either of us, or you need access to those resources, just reach out to us on Instagram with a DM. When you talk to Anton, just message him Pot of Gold, and he'll know that you were sent over there from the podcast today. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. And thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Nathanael.